Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me for step 4 of the North Texas Coerced Legal Representation Pilot Program. We're going to cover pulling credit reports and identifying coerced debts. My name is Brianna Gordley, and I'm a senior policy analyst at Texas Appleseed working on the Fair Financial Services project. I'm really excited to be here with y'all today. So like I mentioned, we have now moved on to step 4, and this part is one of the most important parts of the pilot program because before you were able to refer survivors to the Texas Advocacy Project, you need to help them pull their credit reports and also identify which debts on there are coerced. So it's necessary, like I said, for the survivor to pull at least one credit report to include with the referral to TAP. So first, why do survivors have their credit report pulled? Pulling a credit report allows TAP to complete what's called a conflict check. And this is going to help the attorneys essentially pair survivors with the best attorney for their case. It's also going to help survivors identify which debts they have and also to discover if any of those debts are because of coerced debt. So where can the survivor pull their credit report? Annualcreditreport.com. But don't worry, we're going to go into all of the details as well as give a live demonstration of what the website looks like and also what credit reports look like. But I wanted to go ahead and highlight this here right now. And also it's free to use. So we're really going to be focusing on this resource. But before we dive into it, we're going to talk about a few safety considerations that is really important for advocates and survivors to be mindful of. Before or because of privacy and safety concerns for survivors, it is really crucial to be aware of the unique challenges that survivors may face when they're pulling their credit reports. And so those challenges fall into 3 categories: physical and mailing address, credit file information, and identity verification. So physical and mailing address. When you're pulling a credit report, it is so important, and I'm going to say crucial, I'm going to say important, and I'm going to say necessary a lot throughout this training because all of these steps are important, crucial, and necessary. It's really important to use a safe address or one that's unknown to the abuser. So if you're accessing your credit report online, you can use an old address if necessary. You don't always have to use the most updated information. However, when you're accessing a credit report by mail, because for some reason maybe the survivor isn't able to access their credit report online or by the phone, sometimes that credit report is actually sent to the address on file. And so it's really important to make sure that the address is updated to a new safe address before any mailings. And for credit file information, whenever you're going to pull a credit report, you have to put in personal information about yourself. Some of that personal information is really important to stay private and remain private for the survivor. That's including the address, telephone, and email. Any of that information that is shared with the credit bureau when pulling the credit report will become part of the survivor's credit file, and it may be used for future contact. So again, you do not want to share information that the abuser could use to discover a safe address or otherwise harm the survivor. And then finally, we're going to talk about safety considerations for identity verification. So survivors will be required to verify their identity when they're pulling their credit report. This method is different for each bureau. So for Equifax and TransUnion, they're going to ask for your phone number and your email address, and you get to decide if you want to get texted or emailed a one-time passcode. So once you receive that one-time passcode, you enter it in, and then boom, you're able to access your credit report. But Experian is a little bit of a different process. So they'll request your phone number and your email address. And whenever you go to get a one-time passcode through text or email, it's actually to just verify the device you're using. Once you verify the device, then they're going to move forward with asking verification questions. These can be questions about your personal information, such as any current or past address you have, any phone numbers, and any loans. And so if you do get questions about a loan, let's say about a car debt, but that car loan happens to be coerced debt, there's a really good chance the survivor won't know the answer to that question. And so it's important to just know that when it comes to Experian, if a survivor is not able to answer the identity verification questions because what they ask about is about a coerced debt, they may not be able to access this report. Okay, so now we're going to dig into actually pulling a survivor's credit report. And just want to preface this by saying, before you take this step, just be mindful, pulling a credit report can be very emotional for a survivor. It can often feel like proof, essentially, in writing that their abuser has done something wrong to them. And the weight of that can be very heavy for people. Survivors often feel depressed and hopeless after this process. So it's really important with the survivor's consent if you're able to help advocate and support them through this process. So what is a credit report and why is it so important to pull? So credit reports list a history of a person's finances. So any credit cards you've ever taken out or applied for, any loans, any type of credit product. And it's one of the key ways to identify coerced debts or balances that reflect any type of unauthorized or fraudulent use by an abuser. So like I mentioned earlier, annualcreditreport.com is the only website authorized by the federal government to issue free weekly credit reports from the 3 consumer reporting agencies, which you may well know better as the credit bureaus. And those 3 are Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And trust me, we will be diving into those deeper later on. Also, it's really important to try and pull all 3 credit reports because not all businesses report the same information to all 3 credit bureaus. So the information on one bureau can differ significantly from the information on another. So that's why it's really important to pull all 3 credit reports so that you can get a better picture of all of the potential coerced debts a survivor may have. So where can I pull credit reports? Again, you can get a free credit report from the credit bureaus using annualcreditreport.com. You can download a free credit report from each bureau once every week. And so I could go and access my credit reports today, and the following week I can do that as well for free. And there are 3 main ways that you can access a copy of the credit reports. First, online through annualcreditreport.com. Second, by phone with the phone number here displayed on the screen. And third, by mail. You'll have to fill out a form called Annual Credit Report Request Form, and then you're going to mail it to the Annual Credit Report Request Service. So now we're going to dive into each of these options, and then we're going to do a live demonstration of the Annual Credit Report website. So requesting your credit report online. First, you're going to go to annualcreditreport.com and select Request Your Free Credit Reports. Remember, this is the only website authorized by the federal government to issue free credit reports. So this is the resource that you want to use. You want to enter in the required personal information. So it's going to ask first name, last name, date of birth, social security number, and current and past address. You're going to be given an option to choose which credit bureaus you want to get your credit report from, and you want to check each credit bureau. If you're unable to access your credit report from one of these agencies, so let's say you're moving through the process and for some reason you can't access your Equifax report, you're still able to move through the process to try the other 2 agencies. And this is what we encourage you to do. Then you're going to verify your identity. And again, there's 2 different methods of doing this. So depending on the credit bureau, they'll either request your phone number and email address for that one-time passcode, or they're going to require you to answer security questions about your identity. And 5, once the credit report appears on the screen, you're going to select Print Credit Report. You're able to print it, you're able to download it, and you're able to email it. And so we encourage survivors to make this decision for themselves. Do they want to email their copy of a credit report to their own email address or to a safe email address? Do they want to print it so they can have a physical copy, or do they want to download and save it online to a Google folder or some type of format like that? So then requesting your credit report by phone. So if the survivor is having trouble accessing their credit report online, requesting their credit report by phone is often the next best option. So you're going to call this number here, 1-877-322-8228. There's also the toll-free option below. And then you're going to say and verify the required personal information. So it's going to ask the exact same information on the phone that it did online, but this time you're going to actually have to say it with your voice and then verify it. You're going to also be given the option to choose which credit bureaus you want to receive a credit report from. So you can say all 3 simply by stating Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian, or you can say the phrase all 3, and it'll process that request. Your request will be processed and your report will be mailed to you within 15 days. Important note, for survivors who are blind or that are visually impaired, they're able to request reports in Braille or in large print. So in this case, reports will arrive in about 3 weeks. And again, I want to stress, as I talked about earlier, it is crucial to use a safe mailing address when accessing your credit report by phone. And then finally, requesting your credit report by mail. If the survivor is still having trouble accessing their credit report online or by phone, requesting their credit report by mail is the best remaining option. So you'll go to annualcreditreport.com and you're going to select all about your credit reports and then select getting your credit reports from the side tab, which we'll go over in a demonstration. You're then going to be able to download a request form called the Annual Credit Report Request Form. You'll have to fill this form, you'll have to print the form out, and then you'll have to complete the form and mail it to the address here at Annual Credit Report Request Service. And then once they receive this mailed form, your request will be processed and mailed to you within 15 days. And again, it is crucial to use a safe address when requesting your reports by mail. Okay, so now we're going to go into a live demonstration because I gave you a lot of steps and a lot of information, but I want you to be able to see what the website looks like and how to navigate it. Okay. And so when you type in annualcreditreport.com, this is the main screen that you'll go to. It's very simple. It's not a very long screen at all. And right in the middle, you'll see request your free credit reports. So when I was talking about accessing your credit reports online, this is exactly where you will go here. You'll click this button and then it'll take you to 3 steps to access your free online credit reports. You'll fill out a form, you'll pick the reports you want, and you'll request and review your reports online. When you hit request your reports, this is when it's going to bring you to the section where you have to put in that personal information. So you're filling out this online form here with, like I had mentioned, your name, your date of birth, your social security number, your current address. And then if you've lived there less than 2 years, you'll have to put in your previous address. And then you'll hit next. So now we'll go back. If you want to find the phone number for which you can call and request your credit report, you'll go to all about credit reports right here. And you'll go to getting your credit reports. And then again, it will walk through all of the same information that I shared here, how to do it online, how to do it by phone. And here's that phone number right here. And then how to do it by mail. And this is actually where you can access the request form by clicking here. And now here's the request form that we have. Again, it's going to ask all of the exact same information, just in a different format. You'll print this, fill it out, and then mail it. I encourage you to explore this website. Again, it is the only source to get free credit reports authorized by the federal government. And they also have frequently asked questions, information about how to protect your identity, things to look for, and then just more general information about credit reports and how to access yours and then how to be safe in protecting your personal information. Okay. So now we're going to talk about identifying coerced debts. So now you've successfully been able to pull at least one of the credit reports. But now that you have the credit report, it's really important to then review each report and go through each account to say, okay, is this a coerced debt or is this a debt that you recognize that you took out with your full effective consent? And so you're going to be looking for 2 different components, accounts that have fraud and accounts that are coerced. So for fraud, these are going to be those accounts where the abuser used the survivor's identity without the survivor's consent or knowledge. So most likely when a survivor is reviewing an account and they see an account that they don't recognize, that's most likely a coerced debt account due to fraud. Then there's a coercion method, and this is when the survivor does recognize the coerced debt, but was forced to take it on the debt that they would have otherwise not done so. So these will be accounts in which the survivor most likely will recognize, but will be able to say, I didn't want to take this out, but I had to, or else they were going to hurt me. So we're assessing for fraud, accounts the survivor did not know about, and coercion, accounts the survivor did know about, but that they were forced to take out. And so each credit report looks different. And this can make reviewing accounts much more difficult if you or the survivor is not familiar with each type of credit report. So starting with Equifax, Equifax organizes its credit report accounts in 4 different sections. It'll start with revolving accounts, think of a credit card, then mortgage accounts, mortgage for a home, then installment accounts, think of a personal loan, and then other. Experian will organize its accounts in one of 2 ways. It'll start with all accounts that are open and then closed, or it'll list every account alphabetically, regardless of if it's open or closed. And then TransUnion will organize their accounts, starting with accounts that have adverse information. So for example, if your account is in negative standing, let's say you've missed a payment, that account would be at the top. And then at the bottom would be any satisfactory accounts or accounts that are current. And again, it's really important to be familiar with not only knowing how to pull a credit report, but how each credit report is formatted, how to actually read one. This is going to make it a lot easier for you to help the survivor with reviewing their accounts for fraud and coercion. And so now we're going to go over a live demonstration of all three of the credit reports. Okay, so we're going to start with Equifax. These reports are from the same person, but they have been redacted, and it's not the full report because credit reports can be over 200 pages. And so what I did was I reviewed accounts, and then I selected 3 of the same accounts so that you can look at a comparison between all 3 accounts across all 3 credit bureaus. And so when you start with Equifax, this is what the front page of the credit report looks like. It has the person's name here, which has been redacted, and it has the report confirmation number. It'll have a summary. Most of the credit reports are going to have a summary page that give an overview of the different accounts that you have. So the date of the report here, which has been redacted, the credit file status for this particular person, this credit report has a freeze. And so there's been a freeze placed here, and you'll learn more about a freeze in following videos. Average age of the average account age, length of credit history, just general statistics, when the oldest account was open, when the most recent account was open, and then again, those revolving mortgage, installment, and other categories, how many accounts fall into those. And then they'll go over other items if you have any statements, any personal information. Again, maybe you have a different name, an address, a date of birth, any inquiries you have, which we'll go over later on here. So I'll move on to the next page, and you'll see here at the bottom of the screen, this report is actually 129 pages, but again, it's been cut and reduced. So now we're starting with revolving accounts. So we're first going to look at a Capital One account here. So this is the first of 2 pages for Capital One. Typically, accounts listed on Equifax are 2 full pages because they provide a lot of detailed information. So we have the name of the account here and then an account number. You'll see there's actually not an account number and there hasn't been anything that's been redacted. This just means that for some reason, Equifax has not received account number information, but you'll see on other credit reports that this information is here. So I want you to start to understand that sometimes the formatting is inconsistent. Sometimes the information reported is inconsistent for the same account across all bureaus. It'll have the status, so pays as agreed, the reported balance, and then the available credit. And then you're going to get into the account history. So it's going to have a bunch of different tables laid out, and they're laid out in calendar form. So you'll see the years here, 2020, 2021, 2022, and then all of the months here. And so the balance, it will report each time the balance has essentially been reported in that amount here. Available credit, you'll see that there's no information here. That doesn't mean that there was no available credit. It just means that information hasn't been reported. Any scheduled payments, again, you'll see here as well. High credit, so if anytime there was a high credit balance, it'll be listed. And then credit limit, it'll be listed here. There are times where a credit limit can change. So for example, let's say you start off with a credit card with a credit limit of $500. If you've been paying effectively on your credit card for a year, you haven't had a late payment, what the credit card issuer can do is offer a credit limit increase. And so that amount is subject to change based off of your credit history with that particular product. Amount past due and any activity designator. So the same calendar format, you'll see it consistently 4 different categories. So that's the information that we've got reported here. Oh, this one actually has 3 pages. So then it's going to have a key here of what these different codes can mean. We know the check mark means it's paid on time. So we'll see here, paid on time, paid on time, paid on time. And then you'll get into account details. So this is when you're going to learn more about what the actual account is. So I know that it's Capital One, but what type of account is it from Capital One? You can see loan type, credit card. Oh, okay, this is a credit card from Capital One. Good to know. So that's something that you really want to be paying attention to because you want to know what type of debt it is. You'll see here high credit amount, the credit limit again, these amounts have been redacted. The terms frequency, how often this is being paid on, so monthly. The current balance. You'll see here there are just some category, or a good amount of categories that don't have any information. You'll see owner as individual. So let's say that the person co-signed this credit card, then it would say something along lines of joint or joint co-signer or co-signer. But for this person, it's individual. It's a revolving account, which we know because it's under the revolving account section. And additional information here. Okay, now we're going to go look at an account that's been closed. And we know that it's been closed because on Equifax, it says very clearly closed. So you'll see the exact same format. What you'll notice differently here is the reported balance hasn't been redacted, it's 0, and that's because the account has been closed. You'll also see a lot more payment activity here. Again, there's not any available credit listed here as well, but the exact same format as the last one. High credit, credit limit, amount past due, activity designator, no information here. Payment history, so we're seeing all these check marks, which mean, okay, account's been paid on time. And now let's figure out what type of account this is. So this is when we go to loan type. It's a secured credit card. That makes sense. Here, the activity designator is paid and closed, and we know that this account is closed. It'll also tell you in the comments, account closed at consumer's request. Some things I didn't mention in the last one, but I want to mention here, you're going to really want to pay attention to dates. So when was this account opened? The information's been redacted here, but when you're going through accounts with survivors, and we'll dig more into this later, if a survivor potentially doesn't recognize an account, but also isn't sure if it's coerced debt or not, you'll be able to look at the dates that accounts have been opened and the dates of the last payment to hopefully jog the survivor's memory. If you can give more of a clear timeline, maybe they'll be able to remember, oh, this is something that I did sign up for, or they'll be able to remember, no, I did not sign up for this. And then the date closed because it was closed here. So same information, same categories of information. Now it's just formatted differently. And now we'll go to mortgage accounts. There are no mortgage accounts, and it'll say that on the screen here. And then installment accounts. This will be the last one we look at. So, okay, we have another USAA. We know it's an installment count. We have pay as agreed here. Now this one actually does have the account number reported, but it's been redacted. And then we've got a balance here. Available credit, nothing here, but that hasn't been surprising so far. Any scheduled payments, any high credit, and we've got no credit limit, which is interesting, which makes me think, okay, maybe this isn't a credit card, but let's keep going. Now you've got some comments here, fixed rate. See a whole page of fixed rate. And why it says that, this is a loan type auto. So it's a car loan, essentially. So it's just showing what the fixed rate is. So we'll go back to that second page here, or the third. And so then, okay, payments have been made on time. You'll see some gaps here. But no, we're not keyed into why these gaps are here, but in other credit reports, we'll actually get another key that will show what the gaps are due to. So keep that in mind moving forward. So, okay, we know this is a car loan. They pay on it monthly. So here you're going to pay attention to owner. So now we have a joint contract liability. This means it's not individual. There's a co-signer on this account. Date open, date reported. Again, all of the exact same information here. So now you're seeing 3 different accounts. You've seen a Capital One credit card. You've seen a secured credit card that's been closed, and you've seen an auto loan. And now we're going to move into Experian. So here's that beginning page for Experian. Again, it has its own summary page. You've got at a glance, okay, there's 27 accounts here, 11 hard inquiries. Now we're going to get into the personal information. Here it'll have names. Every iteration of a name that's been used for this person will show up here. Any addresses this person has had, the year of their birth, and any phone numbers they've had. So this information's been redacted, but you can see this is the format of this information for Experian. So for personal statement, this one's interesting, something I wanted to highlight. There's an ID security alert. This means that this person has declared themselves a victim of identity theft and has reported that to the Federal Trade Commission, which you'll learn more about in upcoming videos. But it's saying that this file is frozen. We saw with Equifax, it had a note that there was a security freeze. That's basically what this is saying here, but that this person provided just more information about what that means. So now we're going to get into accounts. So first, we're going to look at Capital One. So now you'll see this is the exact same account we saw in Equifax, but the information's laid out different. With Equifax, we didn't see the account details until the very end. With Capital One, we're seeing it right up front. So you can see here, account name, Capital One. Account number is actually reported here, whereas with Equifax, it wasn't. You see credit card, individual. So you're seeing all of the exact same information, some of it being reported a little bit more, and you're seeing it up front here. And then you get into the calendar format like Equifax had. So payment history, the green dots just mean current on payment. Now, what's different here is instead of doing a calendar for the different types of scheduled payment and the different types of balances, it just lists them out on this report here. So the date, the balance, what was scheduled and what was actually paid and the date when that happened. Contact information. And now we'll move on to the next account. So now we have the USA Federal Savings Bank. This is a secured credit card. Oh, my fault. This is the car loan because right here it says account type auto loan and has the account name, has the account number, and again, all the same information. We see joint because we know this person has a cosigner. The term 66 months, open never late, and then again, getting into that calendar format. And now next we'll have a list of all of the payments. So this can be very, very long, or it can be very, very short. The last one we saw was quite short, just 4 reported payments. On here, we have a lot more reported payments here. And now we're into the secured credit card. So this is USAA, secured card, individual, when it was opened, paid and closed. So before Equifax said closed, right up here near the name, here it's saying that it's closed. You'll also see with the payment history, CLS means closed. It provides a key, and it was closed in January of 2022 right here. And again, reported payments. Now, granted, this may not be a comprehensive list. Just be clear about that. There could be more reported payments. But that's just what we're seeing here that's been reported. Okay. And now finally, we are going to look at TransUnion. So this is the summary page for TransUnion. Another format here we're seeing a little bit different. We've got personal information, the date of the credit report, the social security number, date of birth, name, also known as any nicknames they may have, or this could also be a potential different last name. And then any addresses are listed here when they were reported, and then phone numbers. And so here, what TransUnion will do when going into accounts is it'll actually give a key of what all the different codes will mean. So we saw with Equifax and Experian, a green dot for Experian meant it was paid on time, a check mark for Equifax meant it was paid on time. Here, they'll have what those breakdowns actually mean, and they'll have them right up front. So you'll see 2 full pages of explanations here, of 3, almost 3. And so now we're starting with accounts with adverse information, but we're actually going to skip to satisfactory accounts to compare the 3. So now, once again, we're looking at Capital One for the final time on TransUnion. Here's how this information is laid out. Right at the front shows Capital One, the address and phone number of the company, monthly payment. So we got responsibility again, individual, loan type, boom, credit card. So you'll notice as Equifax almost buries the lead, they'll put all the calendar information up first of different payments and credit balance and high credit limit. And then following, they'll have the account information. What we've noticed is that Experian and TransUnion put that information about the account right up at front, which typically makes it a little bit easier to view, but still all the information's there. Date open and then type revolving. And then it'll get into last payment made, how much has been made per month, and additional categories of information. And then here, it'll just get into payment history. So it doesn't have as much information as Equifax, or it's not laid out in the same way. It's a lot more brief, you'll notice, with Experian and TransUnion. Not to pick on Equifax, just an observation. Okay, and now we're going to move on to, at the bottom here, USA Federal Savings Bank. I don't remember what this one is, so let's find out. Ah, the car loan. Okay. So again, joint account. You'll see that while this is a joint account, it's used different language across all 3 credit bureaus. They're basically saying the same thing, just in different ways. And payment history calendar. So it just goes by year. Instead of breaking down, months in each year, this one goes by year. And then finally, we have the secured credit card because it says it right here. It's individual, all of the same information, y'all. Just laid out at the very front. It'll say pay status, paid closed. And then it will have the categories, the payment history here. This one's clearly been open a little bit longer, so it has just more payment history. Okay. All right, so I know that was a lot of information, but we just thought it would be very helpful for you to at least get a glance at the formats, the very different formats of each of the credit reports. This will help you be more familiar with them and be better able to read them, and hopefully help survivors read and understand exactly what information they're looking at so that we can dive into how to identify which accounts are coerced and which accounts are not. And so now we're going to go back to identifying coerced debts. So first, we're going to start assessing with fraud. So when you're assessing for fraudulent accounts and fraudulent account activities on the survivor's credit report, the survivor likely will not recognize the account at all because, again, the abuser opened the account without the survivor's consent or knowledge. So in order to identify any fraudulent use here, assessing for fraud, you're going to ask the survivor the following questions. First, you're going to start with, were you aware this account existed before you got your credit report? So you're going over the very first account. Let's say it's that Capital One credit card. You're going to ask the survivor, were you aware of this account before you got your credit report? Now, if the survivor says yes, okay, so now we know the survivor knows about the account. We want to ask is, did the partner or the ex-partner, the abuser, ever use their account without them knowing? Because this can still be fraudulent. Even if the account maybe wasn't opened fraudulently, let's say the survivor did open the account, but they're aware that their abuser actually used the account without them knowing at some point, that is still a form of fraud. But let's say the survivor did not know that the account existed at all before they got their credit report. Then we're going to move on to the second question, which is, do you suspect that your partner, ex-partner, opened the account in their name without them knowing? And so again, first we're trying to assess, did the survivor know about account A or not? Did they know about Capital One or not? Then we're going to move into, okay, if they didn't know about it at all, do they suspect that it was their abuser was the one that opened it without them knowing? And if the survivor says yes, then you want to dig into that. You want to get more information, more insight. Why do you think this? And if the survivor is just not sure or they say no, you're just going to move on to the next account. And so we'll talk about ways that you can record this information, but when you're starting this process, you can just make a simple mark on the credit report. If you have a physical copy, highlight it with a Sharpie or with a highlighter, not a Sharpie. Or if you have an online copy, make an online comment to flag this account. Okay, the survivor is not aware of this account and they believe that their abuser was the one that opened it. Check. Now we're going to move on to the next account. You want to do that for each account. So if you determine that it's fraud, okay, great. You don't necessarily need to assess for coercion. But let's say the survivor is aware or is aware of the account, but then they say it's coercion. Then we're going to move on to the second part here. So again, when you're assessing accounts for coercion on the credit report, the survivor likely will recognize the account. So you're going to want to ask just more specific questions to learn about the circumstances around the account being open, because the survivor most likely will have a little bit more information. So first, did your partner or ex-partner ever ask or encourage or pressure you to let you use this account? So let's say the survivor had an account that was opened that they consented to opening themselves, but then their abuser forced them or pressured them into using the account themselves. That's coercion. Or let's say the survivor did not want to open an account at all, but their abuser forced them to open an account, and the abuser is the one that's been reaping the benefits of the account. That's also coercion. So you want to ask the survivor, did your partner, ex-partner ever ask you to use this account? Did they encourage you? Did they pressure you? You want to use that type of language to really pull out this message of coercion. So if the survivor says yes, we're immediately going to move on to the next question. But first, if the survivor says no, that their partner never forced them to do this, oh, I do recognize this account, I opened it, my ex-partner never asked me to use this or pressured me to, they're going to move on to the next account because it's likely not coerced at. But if they did answer yes to this question, you're going to move on to the second question. Did the survivor think that the abuser was going to hurt them? Did the abuser lead the survivor into thinking that they were going to be hurt? So the question you can say here is, did they make you think they might hurt you or a loved one in some way if you didn't let them use the account? And so if the survivor says, yes, I was afraid that they were going to hurt me if they didn't, you want to get more context on that. And it's important to pull out this information because the burden for assessing for coercion is a little bit higher than for fraud. For fraud, a survivor doesn't know. Okay, they didn't know at all. This is very clear cut that this is coerced. But when it's coerced at, but when it's coercion, it gets a little bit stickier. And so it's important to help parse out the information of why the survivor felt that they didn't have a choice and had to take out this debt. And if they say no to this, if they say no, my ex never made me feel like they were going to hurt me or a loved one, again, you're just going to move on to the next account. So you're asking these questions for both accounts. You're assessing for fraud and coercion for every single account that you're going to see on our credit report. So yes, the more accounts on our credit report, the longer this can take, but this is why you need to be thorough. This is why you need to be mindful of time, mindful of space, and also mindful of the mental exhaustion that can go into this process. And so as you're going through each account, like I had mentioned earlier, it's really important to record or make some type of note of which accounts are fraudulent and coercive, and then the circumstances generally around those accounts. So you can do this in two ways. First, you can just highlight or circle the different coerced debt accounts directly on the survivor's credit report. However, if this does not feel like a comfortable option for the survivor, you can get a separate piece of paper and record out the important account information. So your first option is, I have a copy of the credit report. I'm going to make a highlight of an account. This has been coerced and it's coerced through fraud, or it's coerced through coercion. Or you're going to have a separate sheet of paper where you're going to say, okay, this account on this credit report, and you're going to list all this information as coerced and just include additional information. So one way, the first way is quicker, but the second way is just a different additional option for a survivor to utilize. And so once you've assisted the survivor in pulling their credit report and in identifying which debts on their credit report are fraudulent and coerced, you can now move forward with referring survivors to the Texas Advocacy Project. So thank you so much for joining me here today. Again, if you have any questions at all about this section, you can fill out the online question form on the Texas Appleseed resource website. Thank you so much for attending.